Hey, how you doing? I hope you're well. I'm Deanna and welcome to my channel. Today I am going to be doing my July wrap up. It is a little bit late, but better late than never. So July wasn't the best reading month for me, but it is our second busiest period at work, so it makes sense that I wasn't really reading a whole lot, but I did find a few new favorites. So without further ado, let's jump into the bookish stats. So I read a total of 10 books in July, which wasn't really what I was hoping for. So just quickly, I want to mention that I was taking part in the summer Romantasyathon challenge, which was created and hosted by Tori Between Pages. I will link her below. I was hoping to cross off more prompts than I did, but I probably could have crossed off a little bit more if I was doing like multiple prompts per book. So these are the prompts and these are the ones I've completed. So of the 35, I finished 20. So I'm pretty happy with that. Didn't get a single bingo, so less happy about that. But overall, it was a really fun challenge. I was a little worried I was going to burn out with Romantasy, and I think I didn't necessarily burn out reading wise. It was just I had a lot on my plate for work, and also I had a lot of review copies hit my inbox, which was making me a little stressy. So actually reading Romantasy, that didn't bother me at all. That didn't burn me out or put me in a slump or anything like that. So of those 10 books, I read a total of 4,459 pages, which actually, even though 10 books is tie for my lowest number of books read, so that was also in February, which is the busiest period in work, so noticing a trend, it's not the lowest page count I read. So those Romantasies really did have a lot of pages. So here's my ratings. My average rating of the month ends up being 4.25 stars, which is pretty incredible. So I did read 3 5 stars, 3 4.5 stars. I had 2 3.5 stars and 1 2.5 stars, which is my lowest rated book of the year. So not the best. The genre breakdown isn't at all adventurous, to anyone's surprise. So 8 of the books I read were fantasy romance, and I had 1 romance and then 1 paranormal. For formats, we get a little bit more adventurous here. So as I was saying, I was feeling a little bit stressed about arcs, but I did manage to squeeze on 2 at the end of the month, and they're my 2 non-fantasy romance books. And then I did have 3 audiobooks, 1 paperback or physical book, and then 4 ebooks. For my series versus standalone, not looking great for my goal to prioritize and finish series. Considering this challenge, I think I started no joke 15 new series, so this is why for August and probably September I'm gonna be only reading sequels. So I read 7 first books in a series, 1 standalone. I think that first one could be a first book in a series, but I haven't seen any indication online that it is a series, but it did end kind of open. So it could either be just a standalone, not like a cliffhanger, but you could see that there'd be another story with the characters. Anyway, so I've counted it as a standalone, and then I read 2 sequels. So not so good on that front. Let's talk about the books. I will say I did do my first ever vlog, which covered a number of these books. So if you are interested in my more rambly, full in-depth thoughts, you can check that out. Like always, I like to say I'll keep this as concise as possible, but you know me, I love to yap, so we're going to be here for a while. So the first book I read was How the Fox Runs by J.O. Alice. And this is the book I'm not sure if it's a series or a standalone. The way it ended, after the epilogue, there was a series of journal entries from one of the antagonistic characters in the book, which kind of led up more questions about Alice. So I really want to know what's going to happen with her and Atlas. This story follows Alice, who is in a psych ward, essentially, a prison psych ward, after being accused of murdering her boyfriend. But we get the vibe that he wasn't really her boyfriend, she was more like his beard. But anyway, she's there and she is trying to break herself out because no one really believes her. She goes into this psychotic state, she's drawing things, she's hearing things, and she's not well. So she does manage to befriend one of the guards of the psych ward and breaks herself out. And then we go on this like beautiful Alice in Wonderland portal fantasy adventure. And it gives me Sucker Punch vibes, which I love the vibes it gives me. So I loved the portal fantasy elements in this. So as Alice is leaving, she ends up getting caught by Atlas, who is moonlighting as a new psychologist to the hospital. And he manages to keep her safe and leads her into a portal. And in this world, we discovered that there's 5 realms, I think. And our Earth is realm 1 and Atlas is from realm 2. And they believe she is like a changeling or is from a different realm, because one of the side effects of being displaced from your realm is that you have chronic medical issues and chronic mental health issues. So I did love realm 2. It kind of had this like slight steampunky vibe, or gas lamp. I think that's what they call it, like the gas lamp, where we've got this kind of Victorian vibe, but there's magic. And in this world, I'm pretty sure the state and the church together, and it's very militant. And Atlas is been shunned by his adoptive dad, and has been working with his uncle, and his uncle's an academic who's been interested in traveling the realms. So I really did like this kind of Regency steampunk vibe. I think I just want more. I actually do really hope it is a series, because from these journal entries at the end, we don't really know what happened to Elise's family. We find out that she's not from the second realm, so we've got to figure out which realm she's from, and is there a reason she was dumped on realm 1. Atlas, sorry, not Atlas. I keep calling him Atlas. His name's Atticus. Same vibes. So Atticus is, if you like a grumpy hero, I think you will love him. He was kind of raised to be this monster and this weapon, and his sister was kind of used against him to kind of keep him in line, because he was a bit of a willful teenager. So he is very stoic, very reserved, very broody, but I just loved the way we got to see him thaw out. And yeah, when he says to her that, you know, she's not alone anymore and that she finally has someone on her side, I just melted. So this is like a low steam, very slow burn, really cool kind of multiple realms. Even the world kind of gave like his Dark Material vibes, realm 2. So yeah, if that sounds at all interesting to you, highly recommend. Just for your FYI, I use this one for the one bed trope, because as they're traveling across America, they end up sharing a bed. Then I picked up Of Light and Darkness by Shane Leaton, and this was such a disappointment. This book had been on my Kindle Unlimited TBR for about 18 months, and every time I went to, you know, borrow something else and delete it, I would keep it because it said for fans of Labyrinth and Spirited Away. And that would just instantly spark me up again and be like, nope, I need to keep it, because I absolutely love and adore both of those things. So this follows a girl named Charlotte, who is adopted by a vampire as an infant. It looks like she was abandoned by her family. And this is set in Prague, which I freaking love the setting. I was hoping it was going to give me like Daughter of Smoke and Bones vibes, but unfortunately it did not. So Charlotte is human, and she ends up living in the occult city in Prague. So supernatural creatures like witches, warlocks, fae, vampires, shifters, anything you can imagine lives in these little occult cities. So she grows up there, and yeah, so she has a massive inappropriate crush on her guardian, the vampire. Valak, I believe is how you say his name, and he is this relatively powerful vampire who, on a whim, I can't really remember why, ends up antagonizing the Elven king, I believe, who is like the ruler of all the supernaturals in Prague, and does this whole thing. Basically is all like, I'm better than you, you can't control us because vampires can kill you, which causes the High King to start rounding up vampires and wanting to commit genocide. So that was fun. So anyway, Charlotte is living with Varric, who adopted her as a child, and she is now barely legal and has a very inappropriate crush on him. And at the start, he is very much like, no thank you, no sir, that is not that is not going to be the thing. And then she ends up catching the eye of the next elven prince, and he kind of seems sweet, gets a little bit crazy and intense. She rejects him, and then he goes to the capital and starts to really build into this like dictatorship, let's kill all the vampires. So while that happens, Alec is a doctor, but due to this hate mongering and stuff around vampires, he ends up having to fled out of his town. Also, sidebar, yes, she lives with him, but because he's not allowed to leave the occult city because we're trying to keep themselves hidden from humans, she has to go into Prague and lure people home so he can eat. Yeah, that was a weird thing. And then it kind of came across as like him realizing that the elven prince wanted her, and now he's all like, she's my fated mate, and it just gave me super creepy like Renesmee Jacob vibes. It was gross, even worse than Jacob and Renesmee because he raised her. So that was, yeah. Loved the setting, thought the political machinations was interesting, loved the use of all the different supernatural creatures, but could not get over that the potential love triangle was like creepy groomer versus megalomaniac dictator. So that was not a fun time. And safe to say, I will not be continuing on with the series. I misplaced my copy, but then I reread The North Wind by Alexander Warwick as part of the Tandem Collective read-along, which was a really fun time. I enjoyed chatting with this book with an amazing bunch of creators and then also getting to do little prompts and stuff for it. So this is the first book in the Four Winds series, and we're following Borealis, who is the North Wind. And he is this interesting mix of winter and death god. So he reminds me of a mix between Hades and the Frost King from The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden. Borealis is like the perfect mix of this. And we are following a girl named Wren who lives in this little village of Edgewood. She is tasked by her parents who have died to keep her twin sister alive and well, and the little village has been trapped in an endless winter, and they are right near the Deadlands, which is the kind of afterlife that Borealis runs. So every 30 years or so, Borealis comes to Edgewood to claim a bride, and that will ensure that the townsfolk are protected from the dead walkers. And Borealis comes, he is all frosty like you would expect the winter god to be, and he ends up choosing Wren's sister to be his bride. Wren is having none of that, so she decides to trick Borealis and drug her sister and claim herself as sacrifice. However, what she assumed would be like an instant death, upon crossing into the Deadlands, she realizes it is not that, and she ends up marrying Borealis and having to be his bride. I really enjoy this story. We've got, you know, Hades and Persephone vibes. There's some Beauty and the Beast vibes as well happening. Borealis is as patient as he possibly can be, and he's flummoxed. I haven't used that word in a sentence in a while, or if ever, but that's the perfect description. He just is very flummoxed, confused, and just bewildered by Wren. He doesn't really understand humans. He's tried to make it his life mission to understand them so that he can, you know, assign them to the correct afterlife. And Wren is a bit of a troubled character. She's an alcoholic, and we do see her struggling with her addiction, realizing she has an addiction, and then rehabbing herself. And she makes some shitty decisions towards Borealis with the help of his charming younger brother Zephyrus, the West Wind. And we see her having to deal with those consequences. So I enjoyed it just as much on the reread. It was excellent, and I am so excited for the sequel because we are following Zephyrus, so I'm excited to see his redemption arc. And then I picked up Quicksilver by Callie Hart, and this was an instant favorite. I completely adored this one. So we have Sierra Fane, who is raised in this kind of desert world, and we have this queen, the Undying Queen they call her, who rules over this city. I think it's the Silver City. I can't remember. Anyway, she is born and raised in the 3rd district quadrant, little sector, which is the poorest sector. And they have been locked in because a lot of rebels are living there, and there's causing some discontent amongst the masses. And the queen has decided that the easiest way to keep that up is to, you know, spill some propaganda and tell everyone that that quadrant is plague ridden and locks them in. I think she's trying to like kill and starve out the rebellion. So Sierras is just trying to survive. She often will make her way over the wall into the other aspects of the city, and there she ends up making a mockery out of one of the guardians and stealing one of their gold-plated, I think it's a gauntlet, and running back, and she ends up being taken as a prisoner. She has this strange magical ability which she's kept secret, and she is an apprentice blacksmith, which I freaking love. Anyway, she ends up going to the palace. The queen is this vindictive bitch and sets her guardian to kill her slowly as punishment. She's essentially going to like hang up her dead corpse along the walls as like a warning. However, in defense, Sierras pulls a sword out that's been stuck in the ground. She's the only one who's been able to pull it out, and from there this silver floor becomes liquid and a Fey prince pops up, the name of Kingfisher, and she ends up being dragged back to the Fey realms. And this is the first book in Callie Hart's Fey and Alchemy series, so I just completely loved it. I think the pacing was excellent. It's quite a long book, but we got a lot of build up and set up about what's going on in Sierras' world, what's going on in Kingfisher's world. There is a war between the Fey and the Vampire King, and I completely adore this world, was eating it up. The audacity this book had to end on the line it did was crazy, and I cannot wait for the sequel. There is definitely a true enemies to lovers. Sierras, her magic ability is that she's an alchemist, and Kingfisher tricks her into a Fey bargain to see if she can find and create these relics so people can travel through Quicksilver as a way to go into different lands, because his people need more soldiers and resources. Silver is really what they need to help survive these vampires. Now, you have the vampire lords who are very much like the Voltari of Twilight. A lot of Twilight references in this video. I was a Twilight girly, so that made a significant portion of my personality in my teenage years, so I guess it's relevant. Anyway, they need silver because that's the only thing that can stop the vampires. So they said the High Lords, very Voltari-like, but their underlings are kind of these like zombie monsters who just want to eat everybody. And yeah, so good. I loved the side characters. I'm really hoping to see more of them, and cannot wait for more of this book. It is very hyped at the moment, and I fully believe that the hype is 1000% valid. I then picked up The Moonlit Dance by Zoe Abrams, which is the second book in the Alheim Witches duology, and this book's following a girl named Briar who finds out that she is a witch. There is a mysterious person who rocks up at her shop, and that's what starts her whole awakening as a witch, and casts a spell over her and throws her into this world that she never knew was going to exist. There is shadows, danger, intrigue, and she ends up in the arms of a couple of witches. It's a Howl's Moving Castle retelling, it's a Why Choose, and I enjoyed it. It was a fun time. I was looking for something with a little bit more cozy vibes, and this one did have it, even though there is a lot of we need to beat the big bad in here. I just wished that it was a little bit longer, because I feel that the world building and the character description and all that relies really heavily on the fact that it's a Howl's Moving Castle retelling, so I would have liked to see more from that. And also we end up with Five Guys, and just felt there was like a lot of relationships. It's only like 230 pages, so we didn't get enough time to really develop them. And yeah, ultimately really enjoyed. It was a fun time. I just wanted it to be longer because I'm selfish and I wanted more from the story. Then I picked up When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker, and this was just beautiful. I am completely captivated. Again, this book had the audacity to end the way it did, and now I have to wait until like this time next year to pick up the sequel. So this follows a assassin for a rebellion. Apparently I'm into rebellions this month, and Reeve's job is to... She's one of the best assassins in this rebellion. Her job is basically to not ask questions, stay hidden, and get the job done. And that goes a bit pear-shaped when a bounty hunter comes looking for her and kills her best friend. She goes a little bit homicidal, a little John Wicky, and goes off on a revenge killing and ends up locked up by the High Fae Council and in a high security dungeon. Then we have our dragon riding King of the Burn. Let me check the map. Yes, King of the Burn, Han Vigor, who ends up taking his father's throne after killing him and is on a tireless quest to right the wrongs of his lost love. And he's kind of feeling he is never gonna get rid of that grief, but clues lead him to the capital of his brother's kingdom and into the dungeon where he finds a snarky assassin named Reeve, and it is their romance. I just love this world. So we've got dragons, but when dragons decide to rest, they do go up into the sky and calcify and become moons. I completely love this world, the way Sarah A. Parker was able to create like a fully fleshed out world. Like the language is, the slang and the language is altered to, the descriptors are altered based on this world. Like the only example that comes right off my top of my head is the fact that there is this animal called a spangle, and as a curse, Reeve will often say that's a load of spangle shit. Like we would say that's a load of horse shit. And the fact that we're able to see this kind of adjustment in the language really makes it feel like its own world, and she does just drop you in there. So I understand why some people found it a little jarring to get into. I loved it. It's beautiful, it's lyrical, and I just thought that was such a clever addition. I was completely captivated, and she does give you enough like context clues to figure out and be like, oh, a spangle is an animal, and figure out what's happening. I also love that the magic system here is based on getting gifts from the gods, who are these elemental gods, and the way you get the gifts is by hearing their songs. So music does play a big part in here as well. I didn't know what was going to happen with Reeve and Vega's story, but the fact that there is what happens in here. If you've read this, please talk to me because I need to say words. Also sprinkled throughout is the diary entries of a girl who used to be the princess of the Shade, I want to say, Aline Navarre, and the way her story interweaves with Reeve and Vega's story was just beautiful, and I have so many questions. And I'm definitely going to be rereading this one before the next one comes out, which is called The Ballad of Falling Dragons. So very excited. If you like the idea of quite an epic high fantasy romance, this is the book for you. I just realized that I started telling you which prompts I completed for the Summer of Romantasyathon challenge and then just stopped. So Of Light and Darkness was for Romantasy that's been on your TBR for a while. Quicksilver was for enemies to lovers. The Moonlit Dance was for the last book in a series. And then When the Moon Hatched was for a chunky romantasy. Then I picked up Lords of the Hunt by Kate King, which is the first book in her Wild Fae series, and I was jazzed. I was so happy because I was missing my whychooseromance. So this one was for a lucky novice, and basically in this story we are following a human girl named Lonnie Skyborn. She is basically born into servitude and is destined to serve the immortal court. Her mother has very much distilled into her that she needs to keep her head down and keep away from the high fae. She is the unruly child, getting into nonsense and stuff, and then she has a sister who is kind of considered the pristine, perfect daughter, and everything is going well until the night of the hunts. So yes, the wild hunt of mythology. So in this world, once a year, the Fae gather around for these trials, for the wild hunts, and the idea is that it gives anyone a chance to become the king or queen of the Fae. And Lonnie is helping out at this function. She's trying to keep her head down, and her sister comes storming into the king's tent and attempts to kill him. Doesn't go very well for the sister. She is like killed instantly, and Lonnie, in a fit of rage, kills the king with his crown, which was a cool touch. And luckily for her, she kills him after the sun sets, which means she is the winner of the wild hunt. So most of this book takes place a year later. She's been kept in a dungeon where the 4 princes elsewhere, I think they're called the Everstar princes, are ready to bring the hunts back and to try and basically antagonize Lonnie. I love this. I love that we have this woman who just she doesn't accidentally kill the king, but she accidentally becomes royalty. And we have 3 princes. We have Bale, who is the kind of charming drunk rake of the group. And we get this vibe, he's a bit beastish, a bit feline. I'm hoping he's a lion shifter. And he is the one who pushes Lonnie's buttons the most. And I think he just loves to rile her up. And he is attempting to train her so that she doesn't get killed instantly in the hunts, because they've very much got this, you can't pick on her, she's ours to bully vibe. So if you like that, you'll like this. Then we have Prince Sion, who is the Prince of Nightmares and the Prince of Crows. And he is your broody, morally grey Fey Lord, which we all know and love, and he is the one that everyone would assume would be groomed to take the throne. We're very much antagonistic at this stage. He's the one responsible for throwing her in the dungeon, and it'll be interesting what's going to happen with their relationship, given there was a vibe that there's multiple ways to become king. You don't have to kill her. You could marry her. Because Lonnie looks like her sister, they are thinking that she's been part of this rebellion. She's not doing herself any favors, because she's trying to trace her sister's last steps to figure out why her sister tried to kill the king, even though she knew that was going to go horribly wrong. And then there is a prince, which I don't know if he's going to be part of the why choose moment, but he is like golden retriever, really sweet, just seems very genuine, but very interested to see what happens in the next book. It was an absolute fun time, a wild ride. I read it in a day. And then I read White Horse Black Knights by Evie Macaru, which is a dark fantasy romance, which is a Snow White meets Lady Godiva retelling. And I picked this one for pretty cover, because I think this cover is stunning. In this world, they are these people who are god-kissed. Now, depending on where you are, the gods are gods, or they could be fae. In this particular town where Sabine lives, they are called gods. And the gods have gone to sleep hundreds of years ago and has left the kind of world in chaos. There is this war between Astagnon and this northern city. But we start off with Sabine being sold off as a bride to a High Lord, the Valdicis? No, something of that effect. But they give me Medici vibes of the historical Medici family. So conniving. And she's been sold off because her new husband's family owns all the brothels, gambling dens, all that kind of thing in this world, and her dad has a ridiculous gambling debt, so he's going to wipe the debt if he can marry Sabine. Sabine is god-kissed, so people in this world who are god-kissed have been given gifts from the gods, and they can range from anything super useful like being really strong and powerful, have healing abilities, to something as mundane as changing colors of fruit. Now, Sabine's gift is that she can talk to animals, and in an interesting twist, her fiance has tasked her to come across the country in a homage to one of their gods, and she must ride through the countryside butt-ass naked on a horse, hence the Lady Godiva vibes. And the only person she has to safely transport her is her husband's best friend and huntsman, a man named Baston Wolf Bowborn. He is also god-kissed, and he's gifts so that he's got like heightened senses and smells and stuff, so he makes an excellent tracker. And it is a road trip romance, and this world is fascinating. Bastion is not particularly happy that he's been tasked with carting his friend and master's bride across the country. He understands that his friend trusts him, but there has been some stuff happening where god-kissed people have been kidnapped, and there's some rumors around the northern borders that animals and creatures that haven't been seen in hundreds of years are awake. So he really wants to investigate that. And this was so much fun. Completely addictive. I loved watching Sabine's character. She didn't really have a great life. Her father sold her off to some nuns who treated her like shit and abused her. And she's now been sold off by a father to get married, and you think from the surface you've got this young girl whose gift is to speak to animals, that she would be this kind of like willful little placid creature, but she constantly has this thing in her mind which they can have my body but they cannot take my mind. So she's quite aware of her situation, but she refuses to break. And there are some moments where you see that this gift, which you would think is, oh, so cute, you know, she can talk to birds. Like, she tries to escape Bastion at one stage and ends up sicking a wildcat on him. Like, she can't fight him, no, but she can talk to the animals and ask them to do it. So that was really cool. And interesting to see what's going to happen, because we do kind of get this very swoony romance and forbidden romance, given that, you know, she's expected to be married and he's her bodyguard. And just going to be super, super interesting to see. We're kind of really getting into the politics of the world, and there's a kidnapping attempt. We find out more about some stuff that's been happening north of the wall, and I am just absolutely dying to get to the second book, Silver Wings Golden Games. Really addictive world. Cannot wait to read more. Then we branch away from the fantasy romance. I think I was fantasy romanced out. I also had a number of reviews that I needed to get to. So I then I finished Sin Like the Devil by J. Rose, which is the first book in her Harrowdene Manor series, but it is contained in her like sub-security universe, which is this dark romance universe, which I freaking love. So this is a Why Choose dark romance, and in this we are following Ripley. So Ripley has been invited to be interviewed as part of a documentary, which is going to be a big expose on the infamous Incendia Corporation. So this company created and funded 6 private psychiatric clinics around the UK, and these institutes were sold to the public as these kind of pinnacles of mental health treatment and care, but were actually they did do that at some level to keep the funding going, but realistically what they were was this like people torturing facilities for the rich and famous. And it was very much that kind of asylum for the lost souls who were going to go missing with no questions asked. And she's left Harrowdene about 10 years ago, and she's ready to tell her tale. However, she might not be the victim that everyone thinks she was. Yes, she was a patient in Harrowdene, but she did whatever she could to survive, and she was the queen of the manor. And to get privileges played into the sick and twisted happenings to keep herself protected. And things start going awry when events from one of the previous series and the Blackwood Institute prisoners have escaped. Another one of their institutes has been shut down upon investigation, and Ripley's rule is under threat when a couple of prisoners are transferred to her institute. However, 2 of them were men that she sent to be killed and are walking around ready to kill her back. So yes, this was fantastic. I love morally grey characters, but I have not read nearly enough morally grey female characters, and I adored Ripley. We can see that she feels some guilt over what she's doing, but ultimately she likes the thrill of having power that she never had as an orphaned child on the outside world. So she has this power. It's something that's addicting, and she just loves the thrill of being untouchable. And this is a Why Choose romance. So what I love about J. Rose's Why Choose is that we get a very distinct flavor of each of the romances, and they develop at different points. So we have the 2 guys, Lennox and Xander, who she met at the previous institute she was in, and they don't have a great track record because they killed her best friend to take her top spot in the institute. And Ripley does some things and gets them sent to the Z Wing, which is supposed to be where that nefarious, dark, twisted shit's happening, and pretty much left them for dead. So we have Lennox, who is this just man full of rage. He's there because he murdered his grandfather after he found out his grandfather was abusing his little sister for her entire life and ended up killing herself. So again, dark shit. And then we have Xander, who is a sociopath. We get the hint that some really dark and twisted stuff happened to him as a kid, which has warped his psyche, and he's fascinated with pain. Whether that's inflicting pain on himself, less so, but is infatuated with inflicting pain on other people. So that's a very slow burn, because Lennox and Xander want to kill Ripley and vice versa. So it's interesting, we kind of have the events in the story lead Lennox and Ripley through a traumatic forced proximity situation. They kind of trauma bond and throw down their weapons and kind of agree to be friends for the sake of their little found family unit. And then we have Xander, who is just fascinated in a creepy, borderline obsessive way with Ripley. And they did have a very sensual, high steam moment, which was the ruse that gave Lennox the time to kill Ripley's best friend, but he is fascinated with her. He's fascinated by the fact that she's turned herself from this meek little lamb to this strong, powerful woman, and he wants to break her, but he won't let anyone else do it. And then we have Rain, and Rain is my beautiful, tortured musician. He is a violinist, and he's blind, and he is a heroin addict, and he's a sweetheart. And I love that around Rain, Ripley finds this kind of camaraderie. They're both artists. Ripley is a painter, and they find this kind of like safe space to be vulnerable with each other. But there is an interesting dynamic because of Ripley's power. She can get drugs into the facility, so there is some complications that she's dealing to Rain and things like that. I love this. The what's happening in the macro plot. I just also love the way it's told, that we know that Ripley's fine because she's doing the interview, and we're going backwards and forwards. And I love the little interspersed moments we get of them in the present day, because we get to see some characters from Saab Securities that we did see in Saab Security and the Briar Valley series. And I'm so excited for the next one. And I think, in fact, to get over my little hangover for this series, I'm going to have to go and read the Blackwood Institute because I cannot get enough of this world. And then last but not least, I read Priceless by Devon Sinclair, and I couldn't help myself. This is one of my most anticipated sequels. And when that arc hit my Kindle, I was like, peace out. Do not bother me. Do not pass go. Do not talk to me. I need to read this book. So this is the second book in her Clarity Coast omegaverse. And first up, I just love Devon Sinclair's brand of omegaverse. She balances the sweet and spicy so well. So we have, obviously omegaverse can be quite high steam because we've got heats and knots and stuff, but we just have this kind of sweetness in the fact that there's these big strong alphas who are wanting to court the omegas. It was so good. I've been dying to read Ocean's story after little glimpses we got in Endless, and the wait was worth it because this was just absolute perfection. So Ocean is a plus size character, and this isn't necessarily your plus size woman who loves her body, so confident, rocks it. This is quite a realistic take. Ocean has her good days, but she also has her bad days. And she has been put into this, what's essentially a conservation ship. Her parents died when she was young and left everything to her in a trust, but her trust is not something she's able to access until she's 35, and the running of the estate and her well-being is been tasked to her aunt and uncle. Her aunt and uncle are horrific people, and they make some consistently snarky comments about Ocean's weight, and they do some horrific things, like her aunt makes her wear a corset that's too small all day every day as a way to like squeeze her body into a smaller shape and to, I guess, constrict her eating. At one stage they put locks on the cabinets, and it's all done in this like thinly veiled attempt of being helpful to try and get her to be healthy. And she has this deep-seated stigma about who she is and about her weight, and she has no confidence. So she does have good days when she's free from all that bullshit and she's with her friends and she can just appreciate and love who she is. But ultimately there are a lot of days where she's not happy and not confident in her body. And then we have the DuPont pack, who might just be my favorite alpha pack. Maybe it's pretty close. And they are CEOs of this big corporation, which includes fun things like some clothing stores, some bridal lines, lingerie. They also have sex toys shop, and they have this very like playboy billionaire image because they're single. And every now and then, if it's a slow news day, the media seems to just repost images of them on a holiday like 4 years earlier with some girl. So they're about to make a deal with a kids clothing line, and the board of directors tries to strong arm them into getting married, in saying that, you know, their Playboy party image is what's going to ruin the deal. Now, the alphas are Everett, Micah, and Cameron, and boy, do they not like this idea. They are trying to come up with a way to tell the board to go fuck themselves, essentially. And when they're at a charity event and they see Ocean across the room and they are completely besotted with her, they fell first and they fell hard. And then they are trying to, you know, make their way over, and they actually save Ocean from a nasty piece of work who was trying to like convince her to go back home with him. And Cameron, I believe it's Cameron, steps in, and then they notice that they are scent matched. And in this world, alphas know straight away, but omegas cannot sense it until they're in their heat. So they go to the board, fine, we see your marriage deal and we are going to make a deal with Ocean's uncle, who is a fabrics manufacturer, and as part of that deal they want to marry Ocean for a year. They get the vibe very quickly that she has zero self-confidence and would be scared off by them approaching her directly, so they use this kind of marriage of convenience as a way to get her to agree to get to know them, and then do what they can through the year to convince her to stay. And they are so, so sweet. The way that when they do a photo shoot for the wedding happens like super quick and everything's all planned for her, but the way that they like post pics and make these cute little Instagram posts, and like Cameron buys a oversized hoodie and wears it around for days so that she can have clothing that's big enough for her to wear that smells like him. And I am a simp for the marriage of convenience trope, but when you add in the fact that these alphas have forged this like forced proximity moment because they don't want this beautiful woman who's clearly unaware of her worth, oh, I'm getting emotional thinking about it, go away, just absolutely beautiful. I'm a plus size girly and I appreciated so much the depiction of feelings she has towards her body and her body image. We have a very fantastic holiday, which they go into this world's version of Greece, and there is a very steamy temple scene. While there, the DuPont pack do everything they can to show Ocean that they are attracted to her and that they think she is wonderful. I should say that she is a florist, and her business in particularly designs flowers and bouquets with the language of flowers. And I love that she's very quiet, but I love that she uses her flowers as a silent way to put her middle finger up to people. So like when she decorated for that charity event for her uncle, there was all these beautiful flowers, but their meanings was like venom and betrayal and I hate you. And it's just like this beautiful thing. But when the guys found out that that's what she did when they first meet her, they all bring her a different bouquet and make sure that they get the meanings of the flowers right, and it's super cute. And then for the overarching plot, there is some sinister dealings happening with the company. There was like these interesting like things happening where it was almost going to seem like that they were going to try and take down the company and take down the alphas. And yeah, basically I love everything about this book. I just want to pick it up and reread it right now. This might be a book that I do go to when I need a pick-me-up because, yeah, just the romance in here was just so fantastic. I loved everything about it. And we get to see a little bit of Trinity, which is the third friend in this group, which I think might be, unfortunately, the last book in this particular Omegaverse series, but cannot wait to see what Devon Sinclair writes next, and very interested to know more about her. But yes, if you love Omegaverse, love whychoose, love some fantastic plus size representation, but aren't too triggered by the fat phobia that is mentioned in here, I would highly recommend picking up Priceless. All right, there you go. So they are the 10 books that I read in July. So comment down below and let me know what your favorite book of July was, or you can leave me a blue emoji for Priceless. Please like and subscribe if you're interested in seeing more content from me. I'll be posting new videos every Sunday. Linked in the description box below will be all the books and any reviews if I have them. I will also leave links to my social media channels below if you're interested in following me or talking to me on any other corner of the internet. Anyway, that's all from me today, guys. I hope you're doing all kinds of well, and I will speak to you soon. See ya!